Welcome back to Chapter 19, Waste. Today we're going to talk about Section 3, Hazardous Waste. And this is our last session together, so I'd really like to spend it with you. But I have had a guest ask to present this lecture. He's very passionate about hazardous waste and what we should do about it. So without any further ado, sir, I will hand it over to you. Mr. Pettit has graciously allowed me to share with you about hazardous waste. They can be liquids, or they can often contain toxic, corrosive, or even explosive materials. So you take some form of hazardous waste, you add a solid to it, and now we have a gas, solid, liquid, or gas, toxic waste. Some of these examples you may not think of. Something as simple as dyes, cleaners, solvents that you have, plastics, pesticides, batteries, things that you just have commonly in your house and you think nothing of and you toss away. These are hazardous to humans and other organisms. So let's take a look at what just might happen. So we have some hazardous waste here. And we take our little man here and we place him inside of the hazardous waste. And oh no, there he goes. Hazardous waste. Oh, you want to see that again. I understand. Very simple. Man, hazardous waste, and the man is really no more. Is this what you want for your planet? Continue on with your disposal of hazardous waste, and this is your future. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act required producers of hazardous waste to keep records of how their wastes are handled. They require all hazardous waste facilities to be built and operated according to standards designed to prevent facilities from polluting the environment, similar to how the Emperor and I have worked to implement things. In 1980, your own Congress passed the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, more commonly known as the Superfund Act. Mr. Pettit let me know that he had you guys investigate some Superfunds earlier in the year, so you should have an idea. The EPA finally had the right to sue the owners of hazardous waste sites who had illegally dumped their waste. As you can see, the cleanup of improperly discarded waste is difficult and extremely expensive. The act also created a fund of money to pay for the cleaning when the companies wouldn't do it. Well, cleanup, as you may well know, has been completed at only 341 of the roughly 1,620 sites, and this is only in your country, not to mention the rest of your pathetic world. One way to prevent the hazardous waste, well, is to produce less of it or none at all. For example, some of your manufacturers can discover that if they redesign their manufacturing process, they can use less or none of it. Back in the turn of the early 18th century, you would get beavers, skin their hides, treat the hides with mercury in order to receive felt. Well, we no longer use mercury to receive felt because the process was unnecessary. Unnecessary in terms of toxic waste, unnecessary in terms of cost of manufacturing and getting the mercury. So it was cheaper to do it without it and safer for everyone. These are some of the ways that we can cut the costs of waste of disposal. Another way is to find a way to reuse it. Just because I have used the solvent to dissolve your little man, it doesn't mean someone else can't still use the solvent. It may not be good for my purposes anymore, but it may well be good for someone else's. So instead of just throwing it out, we can send it on to someone else who can make proper use of it. Some types of waste can actually be treated with chemicals to make them less hazardous. Some of your cyanides, which are extremely poisonous compounds, well, they can be combined with oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen, which we just find in the air. So this makes them safe. Waste can also be biologically treated. Sludge, as you learned about treating some of the waste, when we have our solid waste and our sewage gets turned into sludge, well, many soil bacteria can break that down into less harmful substances. And this is just some of the ways that we have. But most of your hazardous waste are simply going to land disposal. You're taking it to a piece of land and throwing it out, disposing on the land. In concentrated or solid forms, oftentimes you're just placing that in a barrel. And those barrels are being buried inside of the landfill in a special container, do not leak or exposed, at least for the time being. One type of land disposal facilities use is deep well injection. We drill a very deep well. We take it below the water level, below the aquifer, below some of the permeable rock, and we're disposing of it there. It is helpful for us today, but unfortunately you live on a geologically active planet and you need to begin thinking about the future, don't you? But this is one way. Then we cover them with cement. It works for the time being. Not a bad idea, but let's have better thoughts. If you look at the picture that we're putting up here behind us, you can see that aspect. We're trying to go below the layers that are harmful to you, but we need to think to our children's children's children sometimes. Another one is just surface impoundment. This is going to be a depression, a human-made excavation. Serves as a disposal facility where it can hold the accumulation of your waste. Well, they're basically a pond scum, where you dump your waste in and allow the water to evaporate off the top so you can simply add more waste into it. Some of these hazardous wastes can be absorbed, broken down, and their toxicity reduced when they're treated with biological, bacteria, and some various chemical agents to break them down. They've been known to help contain some of this hazardous waste. Also, just your flowering plants and trees, as you see what's occurring here, can help absorb some of the waste. Of course, not too much. And one of the things that you are playing with and trying is incinerating the hazardous waste. Can be a safe way, but it is also one of the most expensive forms. So when we go to incinerating, you figure we will simply burn it, light it up, and lo and behold, it's gone. No harm, no foul, right? As we allow it to just burn, it evaporates up into ash and leaves your little planet, but the remains continue. It's not all gone. As you can see, the waste remains causing problems. Until recently, only local laws regulated your waste and disposal in the United States. Up until the 80s, before the EPA had teeth, companies would simply send their waste off to somewhere a less populated state. We'll send it there, away from us, but not thinking about them. Now your hazardous waste are exported through international trade agreements to facilities in other countries. Once again, out of sight, out of mind, right? We're giving it to them. Yeah, I've seen this exportation of waste to other countries, worlds if you will, before. You may have as well. Household products also generate the hazardous waste. You're thinking, it's not my fault, it's not my problem, I'm not making hazardous waste, but are you disposing of it properly? Some should be disposed of in specially designed hazardous. So, things such as your paints, some of your chemicals that you use in water softening, your motor oil, which we'll get to later, and even just some of your solvents, like you may use for doing your nails. Things that we find in computers, batteries, antifreeze, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. All of these should not be put down the drain or put in the trash. They need to go to a solid waste landfill, a hazardous waste site. Many of the cities around the country have begun to provide more collection for hazardous waste, so it can be disposed of properly. These are things that we have tried to instill in the empire, things to have people do what should be done from the beginning. Trained workers then can sort these hazardous materials and put them in proper barrels for disposal. Similar to what you're doing with your recycling now, it's a start, but you're not all the way there yet. Lastly, your motor oil. It is illegal to pour this on the ground or to throw it in the trash. You do your oil in your own home, it needs to be taken to a proper facility. However, people in your states, the United States of America, throw away over 700 million liters of motor oil every year. And this is not counting for disposal of service stations or the automobile repair shops. Yeah, humans with your oil, waste, and spills in the country. Oil is a bigger problem than most of you can even imagine, as is shown by our friend here. Motor oil can be recycled. Simply take it to the nearest automobile service station. Take it to any of the places that you typically buy it. Any auto sale will take it. Some cities have designated oil collection receptors, and they recycle the oil turned in by citizens like you and like me. I hope that you have learned something and that you will join me so that together we can end this ridiculous spread of hazardous waste, killing innocent beings throughout your world, your country, and the galaxy.